one of the things I try to challenge myself to do is if it's something I'm not necessarily as interested in, I try to put myself in the mind of someone who is steeped in that topic, and it I feel it helps me sort of practice empathy in my writing and also just in my life in general.
Hey everyone, I'm Harlan Gatlin, and I want to welcome you to our interview series, Behind the Byline, where we get a glimpse behind the curtain at some of the fantastic writers who contribute to our team. Joining me today is Evan Crowther. Evan, you want to take a beat to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, like you said, my name's Evan Crowther. I've been freelancing with ClearVoice for I think a little over 2 years now. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, everyone's content journey begins at a single step. So, what got you into the world of content marketing?
So during the COVID-19 lockdowns pandemic, I think like a lot of people, I kind of got interested in finding ways to work remotely and to freelance. And I kind of heard of copywriting, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And I started looking into it. Did a little bit of work for a small business and then returned to office and kind of forgot about it for a while. And when I decided to sort of re-examine that as an option. I really kind of got serious about learning about SEO and how to really get into content writing. And yeah, from there I just sort of really dove in at the deep end and kind of learned as I went.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's how it always starts is there's just an opportunity where it just opens up. There's time available for it. And there's always kind of this deep-seated passion, and it's just a perfect opportunity that kind of presents itself at the right time. So what was the first, do you remember the first industry you started writing for, like where you really got your start out?
I have a background in manufacturing. I was a welder for several years, and then I actually taught welding at a tech school. So manufacturing is mostly where I started. And then working at the college I was working at, we also had students in the HVAC department that I worked with, and so I had to learn a lot about HVAC. So home improvement and manufacturing were where I really kind of cut my teeth on content marketing.
Interesting. So with that background in welding and woodworking, that must give you a pretty unique perspective when you're writing for the manufacturing industry. How do you translate something like hands-on skills into compelling content for a reader?
So I think the interesting thing about content writing for me is taking a complex topic, which a lot of manufacturing topics are really technical and different kinds of metal and machines, and taking something complex and turning it into something that's easy to understand. And that's one of the things I really love about content marketing. So I try to really break things down in a way that's easy to wrap your head around for any kind of audience.
Absolutely. And you mentioned how some of these topics, especially in the home improvement space or in the manufacturing space, can be pretty technical and pretty complex. What's the most challenging home improvement topic you've written about, and how did you tackle it? What were the steps that you took to take on that writing process?
Anything about plumbing, I didn't have direct experience in, but it was sort of adjacent to things I knew about. So it was a lot of research on the front end, which I always love learning about something new. But it was a lot of work trying to understand all the different materials and pieces that someone in the plumbing industry might use, or someone who at their home has some kind of plumbing problem that they're looking for answers to. So that was a lot of work, but really rewarding. And now I can kind of take on plumbing related topics with a lot more confidence.
Yeah, I think you hit on something so important there. You said that you love learning new things, like just naturally. I think that's a huge part of being in the content marketing space and being a professional writer. Is that not only do you have to have some level of creativity or desire to be creative and weave these interesting narratives, no matter what the topic is, but you have to be willing to learn. You have to have a desire to learn new things because you're not always writing for just the same industry every time, and there could be a challenge there. So you mentioned research is crucial when you're learning something new. What tools and techniques do you use to conduct research and to gather insights about the topic you're writing about, no matter the industry?
Well, different clients have different sources that they're more inclined for you to use, but I always try to find reputable kind of academic sources, especially if it's something I already know about and can kind of jump in on the deep end. And so one really helpful tool that I'll use is on Google and other search engines, you can filter by domain. So you can search for like only.edu or only.gov, and that will lead you to things like the EPA website and articles that they have. And so that's a great way for me to find academic, like really reputable, vetted sources rather than just any other thing on the internet.
Let me tell you, Evan, that is a great tool that I think I need to add to my tool belt. I think that's what's cool about content marketing is you can constantly learn new trends, you can learn new tools, you can learn really tips and tricks of the trade from other people that you can apply to your own career. Is there anything that you do specifically to adapt your communication style when you're working with different customers or industries or audiences? I know, especially in like the manufacturing industry, that's a very diverse audience across the board, from C-suite individuals to those who are hands-on with their tools.
Absolutely. So one thing I'll do when I first take on an assignment is I'll try to get what's called a customer avatar, which is basically you have the client explain to you, they make up this fictional person and they say, this is my ideal customer. Let's say his name's Paul, and he's, 40s to 50s. He works in this industry, and these are some of the problems he has in his chosen field. So for some clients, you want something a little more polished and academic. If you're writing about technology, you want to be more technical and academic in what you're writing. Whereas in something like real estate, you're going to want to be more like friendly and approachable. And so that's one of the first things I'll try to do is get that avatar.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to do a deep dive on the audience and understand who they are, because that's ultimately going to affect how you approach the content. So we've talked about where you started at, and the industries you currently write for. But is there a specific industry you're most passionate about writing for today?
Yeah, one area that I really didn't expect to be as interested in, but really kind of captured my imagination is those home improvement things. I'm kind of a DIY hobbyist myself, and so anything where the topic kind of gives me inspiration for some projects I could get into around the house. So things like remodeling ideas or outdoor landscaping topics are always really fun because it gets my imagination going and I start thinking of, ooh, I could do that around the house.
Yeah, you're touching on something that's so important here. It's that balance of that the personal interests and personal creative hobbies and your professional life as a writer, and how sometimes those things blend together. We talked about the industries that you've started with, what the industries you're passionate about writing for, and how home improvement has become something you're passionate about because it affects your own personal life and the DIY projects you're taking on. Is you're learning as you go and applying it to your life. But all writers have been in a scenario where they're writing about an industry or they're writing about a topic that they're not so passionate about. So I'm curious, when you're writing about a topic that maybe you're not so passionate about, how do you find your angle?
Well, anyone who knows me knows that I am not a huge sports guy. I don't follow it closely. But sometimes I will get a topic that is related to sports. I had to write something about the Olympics, and I just knew very little about the history of it. And one of the things I try to challenge myself to do is if it's something I'm not necessarily as interested in, I try to put myself in the mind of someone who is steeped in that topic, and I feel it helps me sort of practice empathy in my writing and also just in my life in general.
Absolutely. So interesting that a topic like sports, which is accessible to so many people, isn't something you're passionate about writing about, but that the willingness to take on a topic like that and do the research and learn is super inspiring. Speaking of inspiration, I think we've talked about your past, we've talked about your current what's going on currently with your content marketing journey, but I think the best way to wrap this up is your future. What are your future goals or aspirations as a content writer or strategist?
Well, funny you should say strategist. That's sort of something I've been getting into more lately, and it's something I'm really developing an interest in content strategy, which isn't necessarily writing content pieces, but building a framework for a content marketing team to develop their brand voice. So, sort of doing the big picture content calendars and content strategies is something I've been really getting interested in, and it's something I'd like to develop more in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that from other writers as well, and I liken it to the movie industry when an actor eventually evolves into a producer or a director because they've experienced what it's like to be on the front lines, and they want to curate something themselves, and that's usually where your creativity can really shine. And I have no doubt we'll have some collaborative opportunities with you as a strategist, Evan, here at ClearVoice, especially with how awesome your work is. I really appreciate you joining
Thank
us
you.
today, Evan. And guys, we're going to be back with more interviews with our dynamic writers and industry leaders. To learn more about our amazing content specialists, please visit clearvoice.com.